Hey guys, it's time to talk about hard techno as many of you have requested this, and we want to have a look specifically at the sound of Klangkuenstler. He is one of the most famous hard techno artists, and many of you probably know his track Weltschmerz. So we're gonna have a look today specifically at how the drums work, but in general you should stick around until the end because I will also show you how the melody works, and as always you will get something for free, this time the whole Ableton session including the serum presets for the melody, all the drum samples, and what's most important, the drum processing. So this is what we're gonna have a look at today, guys, and I want to focus on the drums because the drums are what make Klangkuenstler's sound so unique. If you listen to one of his songs, you will notice that the drums always sound kind of similar and they are affected in the same way. So before we look at the individual tracks, check out this. This is the drum group, so you can see there's some glue compression, some drum bass. We're gonna have a look more detailed, but I just want to show you. This is the kick and bass group. Also some glue compression, some bit crushing here, some EQing. Then the top group. This is insane. You see glue compression, more glue compression, redux, even an amp. I mean, this is so much processing, and we always have to keep in mind now that if we listen to a track, for example the kick drum in solo, that it's running through all those effects, through all those glue compressors and redux, EQs, drum bass, whatever. So at times we're gonna put everything out to see the difference, right? So let's start on the kick drum. The first layer is coming from Re-Access Sample Pack, which is available in our shop. And I took the transient here because I think it's really nice. And this combined with another kick, which is just a kick of mine I use sometimes in productions, but I only take the low end here, right? Up here, the filter is reversed. This is our kick drum, it's an A, and you can see it gets a little saturation just to bring the two layers a little bit more together. And then there's a bass, which was recorded out of the kick drum, and you can see that it has kind of a rhythm in here, and let me play it for you. There's some EQing happening, some frequencies we want to take out, and the sidechaining I made it here just by, you know, that's basically like using the LFO tool, but you can also just do this inside the clip and doing the exact same length you want to have. It has this kind of trancey rhythm somehow, but still sounds very dark and very techno. And you notice that there's this kind of crispiness on top of it, which comes from the redux. And the redux, it was not really the best effect in Ableton 10. And now in Ableton 11, we finally got a dry wet knob and different stuff to really use it in a good way. Also the filters are very important, and this is just a preset from Ableton. It's called Some Dust, and this is exactly what it's doing. It just adds this little bit of texture onto everything. So if we compare the on and off state, notice how it also changes a little bit the color of the transient, and you have to be careful when you use this trick to add noise texture because you will also change the tonality of your drum or your sound in general. And yeah, you have to be careful and really mindful about this, but here in this case I really like it, and you can for sure play with the dry wet. That's already the whole kick and bass group, but keep in mind it's running through all the effects. So now let me turn off this, and let me just group this and turn it off as well. So now we really listen to only those two tracks. So you notice the difference is not too big when it comes to kick and bass. So what all those effects do is just bring it a little more right into into a good balance, and also because of the compression everything gets a little smoother and warmer. Now let's have a look at the tops. So now here we have 5 different tracks and the cymbal, right? And let's check them out one by another. You will be maybe a little bit confused. So I want to put off this big effect right here on the top group and just have a listen to the tracks in solo. So first of all, we have a clap. And what's really important here is the gated reverb. In case you don't know how it works, just let me show it to you quickly. We have a reverb that is pretty long and pretty big, but then behind that there is a gate and it's sidechained to itself, but pre-FX, or you could also just choose the dry chain. You need the dry signal to trigger this, so you can see that every time the clap hits, the gate opens up a little bit, and I can control this with the hold function down here to let the reverb through. And because the reverb is so big, but then when the gate closes is completely shut down, it sounds super massive and still has this kind of power and doesn't fade out too long. Like if I put down the gate, this is what it would actually sound like. So the gate is like a, you know, like a stop sign somehow, and gives the clap this kind of very big room but still punchy feeling. And there's just some saturation, EQing, and also a little bit of erosion back here to get this kind of noisy texture on the clap. And if we move to the hi-hat, we see this is just a standard 909, some overdrive in the mid area to focus on that, and you can see there's always a hole in the other pattern, which is the 909 closed, and those two complement each other obviously. And you can already hear that the 909 closed is already pretty noisy. That's because of the strong erosion here, and there's just a little EQ curve which focuses around the 10K, and it's also sidechained to the kick. So all this is not really special, to be honest. It's just simple 909 stuff, gated clap, not that special, but you can already see that there's a lot of texture on to give it this kind of industrial vibe. Now we come to those 2 tracks down here. So the first one is the noise rhythm and the second one is noise 16th, and they're actually pretty similar in a way. So let's start with the noise 16th. So what this is just a noise from Serum. I chose the microchord noise because it's a little darker, and I EQ'd it heavily, and yeah, it's just another 16th layer, a little bit lower frequency wise, and adds on perfectly with the head right here. And this finally gets complemented with this noise rhythm. You can see this hits only sometimes. It's almost the same patch, I just choose another noise to make it a little different, and the filter moves up a little more. And let's check it out in solo maybe first. I think you get what this noise rhythm does. So it's more or less like a filling sound. Like imagine a house beat where you have this filling snares or filling claps. We want the same thing here, but we just need something that is a little more techno. So we take noise and it sounds crispy and also dark in a way. And this is already the whole top group. How do we get from this to this very unique Klangkuenstler sound? Because if we listen to it now, we can tell that it's somehow close, but I mean it's not strong enough, right? So this is the group processing now that we want to have a look at, and I'm gonna go through it effect by effect so we see what's happening here. And in general, what we want to accomplish is we want to compress everything like super heavily. much more than we would actually want something to be compressed. And this is also achieved by using a lot of distortion, which is why the amp is there. And doing all this on the top group is really, really not the number one thing that comes to your mind when you produce music. So it really, really works good because of the industrial context. And yes, let's check out the effects one by another. I will put the kick there as well. So first of all, we have a glue compressor, and this one is only 40% in, but you can already see that it works really heavily. So what we're doing here is typical New York compression, or parallel compression as it's called. So you will do a heavy compression and layer it together with the dry signal, which will make it compress but still keep the transients and the dynamics alive, right? So let's compare this, A and B. So I think the difference here is pretty big. You can hear that everything that is a little quieter, like the 16th note rolls, come up heavily. So what's happening next is we have another glue compressor that is a little softer, but this time on 100%, to glue everything just a little more together. It might sound a little weird, but this is exactly how to do this. You don't want one compressor to do all of the work in those cases, because then you will hear the compressor, right? You will hear it pumping, you will hear it coming up and back down, right? But if you use two compressors, then you will kind of split the tasks and they both work a little softer. You might ask, why not just put the makeup down, those 7 dB? This is because I want the soft clipping here, right? So the soft clipping only happens when I put the makeup up until the 0 dB. So then he starts to soft clip the signal, which means everything that goes above the 0 dB gets kind of chopped away. And this will add some kind of distortion again. And now we're almost there. If we have a listen now. We already achieved this kind of very compressed feeling, but what we need now is this distortion, what I just said. Everything needs to be a little crispier, a little noisier, and there is also some space for more distortion, right? So let's add the amp here. It's in the heavy mode, and I put the presence down and also the treble, but just a little bit, which is very important to get rid of those super highs. And then notice that it's only on 10%. If this is 10%, you can already imagine what happens if I put it to 100, and it somehow kills all the dynamics of the sound. But this is exactly this kind of overdriven feeling that we want the drums to have, right? So if you put the EQ on now to get rid of all those super lows, and also cut a little bit here, and then also I wanted to boost just a little bit in the high frequencies to have this right balance between mids and highs in the top end. Notice now that the cymbal ride is not in there, because I think the cymbal ride is a very, very unique type of top element, let's say, and I don't want it to be that much compressed, right? This is why I put it outside of the top group here, only going through the drum processing in general. And I have an amp on here, but it's much softer than the other one. Some EQing and some side chaining. We can just have a listen real quick. It's also just a simple 909. But that's not everything, guys. As I promised, I'm also going to show you how the melody works in this track. And first of all, we want to have a look at the midis here. So this track is in A minor, which means this is the root note. And if we activate the scale, just for making it a little easier for us to visualize, we can see that this F and E that is used a lot here is the 5th and 6th of the scale. So that's very typical stuff. The 5th and 6th are super, super tense. And we just get added the 4th and the 7th, but only on like very, very single spots here, and everything else revolves around this 6 1 6 5 1 5 pattern. So it's actually like super simple, and it's just a rhythm that makes it a little more interesting. Let's have another listen while we're looking at the midis. That's really such a good melody, making use of everything that makes a melody good, like the right rhythm, the right variations here with the G up, and yeah, what can I say? Amazing work. So this sound here, you will get it also for free, as I said, by following the link in the description. And what we're using here is a square wave, kind of. It's from the basic Minimoog, and just looks a little different, but has the square character. And it's a 2 unison square waves, so we have it very wide, and we have a filter that is not too, like, we don't cut away too much. And let me just turn off all the effects here real quick, and also the effects here. So that's the raw sound, right? And then what's also important is the glide down here, 10 milliseconds, could also maybe be a little longer, it depends. This is what it does, right? It adds this kind of jumping from one note to another. And then we have a chorus. This is the one very important effect for this sound. Some reverb on top, and in general what you will notice that this lead sound kind of gets pushed in the back, and that's very, very, very logical because the drums are so much up front. There is no space in the like 3D imagination of our track for the melody to be up front, so we need the melody to be a little more in the back, and then it will make a nice atmosphere to this very, very hard drums. And to get the right tone here, the preset also works like this already, which is why I saved it like this, but also adding some amp here and also this redux just a little bit, some EQing to make it fit a little more. And last but not least, this is really not so special, but this is just a simple saw bass drone. So we have 2 saw waves, and one is an octave up and also stereo by unison, and there's some noise on the filter which will make it feel a little more analog. I talked about this before, and in general that's just a preset you can check out on your own, see how it works, how the velocity and the note trigger the filter, and that's it, guys. This is how Weltschmerz works. So thank you guys, I hope you enjoyed this, and as always, let us know what you want to see next. Until then, get everything that I talked about for free by following the link in the description, and play around with all the samples and presets that are in there, and have fun making music.